Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Shama, we can start at exact time. Okay.
Okay, sir. Shall we start right now?
Yes, yes. No issue. Because we should keep always, exact time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ICCS online webinar series. Today, we all have gathered here for the third webinar of the ICCS webinar series, aimed at creating awareness on climate change. The topic for today is Impact of Climate Change on Agriculture in Kerala by Dr. U. Surendran. Before starting the lecture, I would like to briefly introduce today's keynote speaker before you all. Dr. Surendran received his MSc in Soil Science and Agricultural Chemistry in 2000 from Annamalai University and PhD in Soil Science and Agricultural Chemistry from Annamalai University in 2005. He started his career as a scientist at EID Pari Limited in 2006 and later joined Center for Water Resources Development and Management, Kozhikode, Kerala as a scientist in 2010 and is currently working as the principal scientist and head of Land and Water Management Research Group at CWRDM. His primary research interests are soil fertility, decision support system for budgeting, crop water requirement, irrigation management, precision farming using drip fertigation technologies, crop simulation modeling, environmental impacts of agrochemicals, climate change and its impact on agriculture, etc. During his career, he has bagged several awards, has around 101 publications, and is a peer reviewer of several national and international journals. So, without wasting much time, we will now move on to the lecture. I request all of you, other than the speaker, to kindly turn off your video and audio. We've also watched this session live on YouTube by streaming onto the official YouTube channel of ICCS. Now, I welcome Dr. Surendran for delivering the lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shama. First of all, I would like to thank Director ICCS and for giving me this opportunity on the climate lecture series. I'll be talking on the impact of climate change on agriculture with special reference to Kerala. What are all the climate resilient agriculture practices available and how we can improve the productivity or sustain the productivity. So with this background, just the topics what we are planning to discuss today is about the agriculture, what is the scenario in India and Kerala in comparison, and climate change related, what are all the issues with respect to drought or floods related to the climate change, and what are all the mitigation and adaptation options, especially with the few case studies funded by different funding agencies. So with respect to climate change, I think first 2-3 lecture series we have heard, so I will not take much time since it's a known fact now. Everyone, we are facing or realizing the impact of climate change by the extreme events what we are facing in the recent past. As all of us know that temperature is almost around 1 degree increase has been noted. Similarly, with respect to carbon dioxide, if you look at it, currently it is recently it has been shown that it is around 412 ppm on the global average. So these things has a direct impact. This is one of the photographs which when I visited Austria for the International Institute of Applied System Analysis, I could get this. Actually, during 1875 and recent past, how the glaciers are melting like that. So the climate change and its impact is evident in all the sectors, especially with respect to water resource sector and agriculture. All these things are evident, which we are facing recently. When coming to the agriculture scenario, if you look at it, actually we are leads with respect to India. If you look at it, we have around 43% of the total geographical area under the cultivation, which is very high when compared to other global nations or other nations in the globe, which is especially to feed this enormous population. This is more important. And another thing is, if you look at the irrigated area also, we have approximately around 50% of the area under irrigation, whether it is a net irrigated area or gross irrigated area, which is also phenomenally high when we compare with other nations. But recently, China has overtook us with respect to the total irrigated area. But still, we are in the top first or second positions. But if you look at the selected parameters over the years, there is a phenomenal growth with respect to agriculture, especially in the productivity terms and all, thanks to the Green Revolution. And area-wise also, if you look at it, almost all the crops, we have a phenomenal increase. Around 30 to 40 percentage of area. With respect to area I'm discussing, especially with respect to coarse cereals or small millets, only there was a slight decline. But other than that, all the crops, food crops or horticulture crops or cereals, then oil seeds, everywhere the area is tending to increase, which means the net cultivated area or gross crop area is getting improved. When you compare the net cultivated area and gross crop area, the percentage of increase is much higher in the gross crop area, which means that it is not that only single crop we are taking, it may be taking into the multiple cropping situations. So that will ultimately improve our food productivity. As if you look at the earlier stage of 1950s or 60s, now we have reached to the stage of surplus, and we have brought the Food Security Act with confidence and all. And this is exclusively because of the new crop varieties, especially the hybrids, and which is very highly responsive to water and nutrients, which were introduced, and the development of irrigation projects, especially the Green Revolution technology, which support of CJR institutions. And with the efforts, especially from the agriculture scientists, bureaucrats, farmers, especially, they have taken this as a great will to apply all these things, new technologies, new developments, which is happening in this. And the R&D in agriculture with the US land grant institutions has supported this in a large scale. So that was our primary, the primary focus on that during those period to ensure the food security. And mainly it was supported by the irrigation development and all the 5-year plans. Exactly, if you look at it, almost up to the 9th or 10th 5-year plan, major focus was on the major irrigation or medium irrigation projects, and almost 60% of the total fund allocation was going to the water resource sector. But nowadays it is actually it is getting reduced, and the government is also focusing on the small or minor irrigation schemes because of several environmental issues and other reasons. And when you look at the irrigated area also, as I mentioned, India was the top in the total irrigated area volume wise as well as the total area wise. But recently China has taken over with a higher number. But if you look at it, even for example, in the rice, we are having almost 58 or 59% comes under irrigation, and wheat also around 90%, more than 90% comes under irrigation. So with the assured irrigation means the productivity will be definitely ensured, so that we can ensure the food security. And if you look at the productivity or the average crop yield also, we have a phenomenal increase, almost 4 to 5 times in all the crops, which is because of this introduction of the new varieties and other technologies what we were discussing. So especially with respect to rice, if you look at that, from 600 we have reached up to 2600. So wheat is also almost 6 to 7 times of what we are getting in the past. But if you look at the current scenario, we are almost, if you look at the per capita food grain availability, we are little lesser than the other developing nations or China if you compare it. And our requirement for 2050 as per the FAO projections, we have to produce around 450 million tons. And currently we are at the rate of 290 or 300 million tons, and it is fluctuating between these numbers. So definitely we have to, if you feed to the entire population, we may have to double the production, or almost 1.5 times we have to improve our current productivity rate, then only it will be feasible. But whether what is the status of the production, if you look at it, even though as I mentioned, we are ranking in the top 5 for most of the cases, whether it's with respect to area or production or irrigated area like that. But if you look at the productivity, India ranks very poor in most of the crops. If you look at it, for example, rice, it is around 59, and Egypt is leading that thing with 9,539 kg per hectare. It is actually maybe the area wise it will be less, so that there may be a concentrated efforts on the improvement in the productivity for these least developed nations. But still, which this slide shows that there is a good scope for improvement, or a lot of potential is available to maximize our productivity if you can manage the situations. Similar is the case with rice also. Almost, even though we have a larger area, but our productivity more than, for example, if you look at it, more than 70% of the rice growing districts, the productivity is lesser than the national average. So if we are trying to improve those things, definitely our food security can be maintained. Then this is the general India scenario. There itself, the productivity is low. That's what we have seen from the previous slides. But coming to the Kerala also, it is again much more little disappointing in terms of productivity. But if you look at the advantages or whatever the positivity is, that agriculture scenario of the Kerala is very unique, characterized by diversity of crops and multiplicity of cropping situations. We have different crops starting from perennials, seasonal crops, food crops, horticulture crops, spices, plantations, and our length of growing period is almost around 300 days, almost all the districts, 14 districts, which means that entire year is possible for growing different types of crops. So that naturally we are blessed with such a wonderful climatic conditions and other associated parameters. But when you look at the other side of it, our soils are acidic, kyolinitic in nature, and gravelly with low water holding capacity, like that. And another issue is that we have a distinct altitudinal variations. If you look at that, from below mean sea level to the soaring heights of 2,695 meters, that also within a short span of 120 kilometers. It means if you look at the width of the Kerala, it ranges from 15 kilometer to 120 kilometers is the total width. So what will happen is, if the high intensity rainfall with this have much of undulating topography, which will leads to a lot of soil erosion, leaching, and all these parameters which may influence the productivity. And coming to the area also, similar to India, here also around 52% is comes under net cultivated area. But only difference is the population density here. It is much higher than when we compare with the other means India or other states. And as I mentioned, the almost 90%, or if you can say 85% of the area falls under midland or highland regions, which is subjected to the lot of soil related issues, especially erosion and leaching. And that is particularly more evident in the northern Kerala region. And if you look at the annual rainfall of these, particularly Kerala, it is more or less on par or similar to the other humid tropical conditions. So with respect to the climatic factors and also the other, for example, the solar radiation or sunshine hours, everything we are blessed with that for the entire annual period, or almost more than 10 months. So which actually favors the growth of almost all the crops in Kerala. And we have a very rich species richness, which is also a very peculiar this thing, and it's related to climate only. If you look at this particular graph, you can see that when the what do you call the annual evapotranspiration is less, for example, around 300 to 500 millimeter per year, then the species is comparatively very less, and the range of species is also less. Whereas when we go behind 1,000 or 900, the species richness is also high. And we have, if you look at the crops or trees, whatever it is, natural vegetations, we have a very high number of, or very high richness is there in that. So which means that any type of crops may be suitable to our climatic conditions, which is actually a positive thing. And if you look at the agriculture scenario from 1940s to 1970s, there was different campaigns for improving the productivity or improving the area under cultivation, and we have different campaigns like grow more food and all, and many of the fields have been converted into agriculture. But now what is happening is after 1970s, when you look at the data of last 40 to 50 years, paddy area has reduced around 80 percentage, and which is actually having a different effect. If you look at this number, almost 77 to 80%, and currently also it is having around 2 lakh hectares, which has diminished from 11 lakh hectares, and that is mainly due to the different issues. And when you look at the particularly when you look at the change or shift in cultivation, it is mainly related to the profitability, and farmers will be more interested for going for the more profitable crops. That is how it has been shifted from paddy to other crops, which I will be coming into the detail. And this is one of the study by IITM showed that the heavy precipitation events or high intensity rainfall events is increasing in the recent years. So that is also one of the reasons which the number of rainy days are getting reduced, and intensity of rainfall is increasing. So that is also causing a problem to the agriculture scenario in Kerala. So if you look at the for the last 50 years data, we can easily, this is what I was telling about the paddy from 11 lakh hectares. This data is about 1975, so it's from 9 lakh hectares or 8.76 lakh hectares. It has reduced to 2 lakh hectares. Whereas there is a sharp increase in the perennial crops or other crops mainly, and this indicates that farmers are switching to such crops mainly depending on the profitability, which is largely affected by the other climatic related events. So this is some of the data for the productivity data of major crops associated in Kerala. So similar to what we were discussing about India, here also India, the average is around comparatively poor than the other nations what we were discussing. But if you look at the Kerala also, most of the crops, the productivity is lower when compared to the other states of India. With respect to coconut, if you see our productivity is around 7,365, which is lower than the national average, whereas the other neighboring states and all is producing much higher. And if you look at the pepper also, our productivity is lower when we compare with the other nations. So if you look at Karnataka also, they are getting around 1,100 or 1,200 kg per hectare. So that much of difference we could see, but even though we have other all positive aspects with respect to the climatic factors. So the possible reasons what we can explore is mainly from the based on our studies and also from the literature. You can see that one of the reason is especially the high intensity rainfall which we are receiving. I'll come into the details of that. So if you look at this erosion, which will lead to the tough fertile soil, and along with that, it will be carrying all the fine nutrients and also the fine organic matter. So ultimately, it is affecting the soil health. And if you look at that, if the fine soil is getting removed, so it will be giving rise to the formation of shallow and gravelly soils, which results in the low water holding capacity. And this again, this high intensity rainfall leads to the leaching of nutrients. Coupled with that, again, we have another issue, that water scarcity and crop water deficit, especially during summer. Those slides I'm not showing here, but still, since all of us know that Kerala, it is blessed with both the southwest and northeast monsoon. But even then, most of our studies and also from Kerala Agricultural University studies shows that there will be a soil moisture deficit after the period of November or December. And if there is a failure of summer showers, especially during February, March, April, and definitely it will have an impact on the productivity. And especially with respect to crops like perennials, like coconut or arecanut or even pepper, they may not be visually showing the symptoms of crop water deficit, but actually the productivity will be coming down, which was evident from most of our studies. Then again, another factor is, like, since the climate is humid tropical, it will be there will be more chance of infestation of pests and diseases. So this is what happening. And again, with respect to the cultivation practices, also some of the things are unscientifically being cultivated, and which will result more in the case of soil erosion and removal the fine particles. So these are all some of the this thing. So based on that, actually Department of Agriculture and along with the planning board, they have gone for a detailed analysis of soil health during 2014 to 16 period. So in that, we were also partnering institutions, and it was led by NBSS LUP, ICR Institute, along with the all agriculture university and all other ICR institutes within Kerala were partnering this study. So here, almost all the panchayats, the soil samples have been taken based on the geo coordinates with the grid size, specific grid size, and almost around 2.1 lakh hectare soil samples were collected and analyzed for its parameters with the multi-institutional support. So it has given a very clear indication about the health status of the soil over the period, because we have a historical database based on earlier studies from different institutions. So when we compare with that, there was a lot of change that was happening after 2000 or maybe after 1990s. The entire scenario, like the buffering capacity of the soil. Normally, what we think about the soil as a soil scientist or as a soil related person, we have a tendency that soil has its own natural buffering capacity to come back to its original soil health, but that is not happening, and the soil health is deteriorating to a larger level. That was what our findings has shown. And in this, if you look at that, almost 80% of the soil samples had the magnesium deficiency, 70% had boron deficiency, and strikingly, most important thing is that almost 90% or 88% of the soil tends to be acidic, and actually which is having a direct role with respect to the plant yield or plant growth. And because when if it is a soil is acidic, which will be obstructing the availability of micronutrients, especially most of the micronutrients, as well as it will be inducing the pest and diseases, especially when the soil is acidic. Many of the fungal growth will be high, which will have a definite impact on the plant growth. And another important thing we have noticed is most of the soils are more than 70% of the soils have a sufficient phosphorus level, which is actually which might be due to the continuous application of Factum phos or such kind of phosphatic fertilizers. That was what we could able to understand. So which necessitates that this study confirmed that we need to go for a more site-specific nutrient management under the changing climatic scenario or under the high rainfall scenario. It needs to be maintained to get at least a sustainable yield or an optimum level of yield. So this was done as per the agroecological zones of Kerala. We have 23 zones. So all these zones, including all the panchayats, have been covered, and almost 2.1 lakh samples has been taken. So if you look at this, especially with respect to Palakkad and some regions of Alapi, almost all the regions falls under acidic category, and some of the regions having extremely acidic. Extremely acidic is in the sense less than the pH of 4.5, which is actually it will not be even optimal for the plant growth. Even if you apply lime and all, also it may not be possible to retrieve it to coming to the neutral level, or you have to apply a huge quantity of lime to bring back to the neutrality. So that also we have studied. I will come into those details again. Then if you look at the other nutrients also, as I mentioned, except phosphorus, all other nutrients show some kind of deficiency. Phosphorus, you can see almost most of the area, around 62% of the area falls under the high category. Calcium, you can see similarly magnesium extremely deficit in most of around 74% of the area. So like that, almost all the nutrients, whether it is a micronutrient or macronutrient or secondary nutrient, all will have a definite shortage or deficiency. So with that objective, what is the possibilities of sustaining and improving the agriculture productivity by managing the land and soil nutrient or water management options? We have proposed a program to TIFAC under Department of Science and Technology, and it was a collaborative project with the IRMA, Institute of Rural Management, Anand, and National Institute of Hydrology. And most of these, we have taken 3 study areas, especially Kerala, we have taken Kozhikode, and Madhya Pradesh, it was a Tikkamgarh or Bundelkhand region, which is an extremely drought prone region, and Kozhikode, it is a what do you call humid tropical, and this was a semi-arid region. And Gujarat will have a microcosm of all the climate starting from arid to humid tropical. So entire state of Gujarat, then a small district of Bundelkhand region, one Tikkamgarh area, then another one is Kozhikode. It is also a coastal area representing. So all this we have tried with the different options, like, but I will be presenting the case study of Kerala only. So here, what are all the possible impacts of the climate change, especially with respect to agriculture, land and water management, and water resources in particular, but more focus was on agriculture. So here, as I mentioned initially, the soil related issues we could able to identify based on the earlier studies. So that was our prime focus, how the soil health can be maintained, or soil nutrient status can be sustained. That was our prime objective. And the second objective was how the climate change or the climate change scenarios, how it will be impacting the agriculture, especially in the different context of climate. That is what the second objective was. And what are all the management strategies or options available and that can be tested or validated. So this was the prime three objectives. So first one was about maintaining the soil health. Here we have gone for the nutrient budgeting exercise using NUTMON model. Nutrient monitoring is the model. So here the concept is how the nutrients are coming into the soil. It is coming through all these five means. One is chemical fertilizers or mineral fertilizers, then on-farm manure or off-farm manure, means manure is transported from others outside the farm, or that can be generated inside the farm, maybe residues, crop residues, waste materials and all. Then atmospheric deposition, which may be due to rainfall, especially wet and dry deposition in the case of nitrogen, phosphorus or potassium, and the biological nitrogen fixation with a special reference to nitrogen alone. Similarly, through irrigation water, how much nutrients are getting into the farm. This is the kind of inputs what we have attempted, and these are all the outputs what it is going out from the soil, which may be the crop uptake, removal through residues, leaching, ammonia volatilization, then soil erosion. This is what we were discussing in the initial stage, like how it is largely influencing the crop productivity. So we have to quantify this and what its impact is on the crop productivity. And this is a cycle. So whenever if there is a removal from the soil, from the total soil pool, it may be coming into the available pool, but continuously if it is happening, the entire soil reserve will be reduced so that it may not be able to substitute with the actions of microbes or mining. So normally we call it as nutrient mining. So that is what happening, especially with respect to Kerala and some of the other regions also, the same thing has been reported. So this is the theoretical concept by which we have worked out. And different models have been attempted for this, and it has been calibrated and validated for the Kerala conditions, especially with respect to leaching, erosion and all. With respect to erosion, actually we have validated, this is the screenshots of the module. And so with respect to erosion and leaching, we have quantified it in the conditions of Kerala. This study has been done in the three regions, as I mentioned in the beginning. Detailed analysis for calibration or validation was done in Kerala alone, because these facilities were not there in the other two study regions. So based on these studies only, it has been validated by keeping the other factors like climatic or soil related or terrain conditions. We have taken the respective data. So this is called soil erosion studies using multi-slot divisor. So here we will be quantifying the quantum of soil getting eroded depending on the rainfall, and how much, for example, daily rainfall, how much it is happening, and what will be the quantum of soil eroded. Along with that soil erosion, how much nutrient is getting transported also we have quantified. And that data has been utilized for the validation or calibration model. Actually, for the rainfall intensity of medium and low intensity, the model prediction was very good, whereas the high intensity rainfall, the prediction was not to that level. So we have to make some fine tuning or arrangements according to the high intensity events. So we have classified the rainfall events into different category and then quantified the erosion. So this is some few experiments we have conducted. One is with the tapioca with the different levels of nutrients. Similarly with ash guard and then cowpea, turmeric, ginger, like that. So I am showing only a few of the photographs. So here instead of along the erosion, we have quantified the leaching losses. Then the other parameters like plant growth parameters, morphological parameters, soil moisture, soil wetting pattern and all. So this is how the soil eroded samples or sediments will be collected from the particular sediment tank, and the separately the sediments as well as the runoff water will be quantified for the nutrients and the total quantity of runoff. So these are all a few photographs about that, and you can visualize the difference between the soil health, actually how it is showing the difference with respect to absolute control without application of any nutrients. You can see the growth, whereas the nutrient applied plot you can see the difference. And similarly levels of nutrients also we could able to visually see the difference. Since the slope is very high, it might be because of the already the soil fertility might be in the lower levels. So as I mentioned, we have classified into three different events: high rainfall events, medium rainfall events, and low rainfall events based on rainfall intensity. This is just a sample data I'm showing, but actually we have classified even per hour data based on the automatic weather rain gauge recording data, and that has been used for the calibration. So here we have gone with some kind of soil and water conservation measures, especially with the pineapple strip cropping or contour trenches and all, and how that will be reducing the soil erosion also we could be able to see from this data. For example, if the tapioca alone, in the sense, it is again alone cultivated means we have a soil loss of around 139 kg or tons per hectare for that particular event. Whereas if there is a strip cropping in that particular plot, it has been reduced to 8.28, and in low rainfall events it was nil. So definitely these kind of management practices are required to prevent the soil erosion. And as expected, the soil nutrient levels were high in the eroded soil than the initial soil. These are all some of the other crops and the data what we have obtained from these kind of field experiments. So as expected, with respect to the intensity of the rainfall or the quantum of rainfall, definitely have a strong influence on the soil erosion or soil loss. And whereas if there is a soil conservation practice or a management practices, it was almost nil or very minimal in case of even high rainfall events. So these are all some of the strip cropping and the contour trenching in between the terraces. And similarly, so leaching also we have gone with because this is only one location study, so it may not be proper to calibrate with that. So we have gone with the different soil types, especially with respect to Kerala. The major soil is one is lateritic soil, then sandy soils, coastal sandy especially, and then forest loam. And for standardization, we have used quartz also. So how much will be the erosion has been also accounted. So besides, this is one or two field experiments at the CWN campus. But again, for validating the model, we need to go for multi locations or different climatic scenarios. So for that, we have taken the regional level as Kozhikode district, and this was considered based on the micro watershed level, but the criteria was agroecological zonation based. So Kozhikode as such have 4 agroecological zones: AU2, AU7, AU11, and the AU15. So based on this results, around some 20 farmers fields were selected, and the criteria what we have taken is, one is the agroecological unit, then the second one is topography based, especially lowland, midland, highland, as if all the 3 regions will be covered representatively. Similarly, the irrigation practices, whether it is a irrigated condition or rain-fed conditions, that also been considered while selecting the farm. Then size groups, whether it is a small farm, marginal farm, or a larger one, these categories also considered. Another point is like different cropping systems or different crops, especially the important crops like coconut, arecanut, spices, which is predominant in the district, has also been considered. And with respect to the management practices, we have taken 2 categories. One is organic farming, another one is a conventional way or application of chemical fertilizers and all. So that depends on the farmer's practice, but So these are all the 20 farm fields we have selected representatively in different regions of Kerala, including the coastal regions. And the data were collected from these farms, how the nutrients are coming into the farm, how it is going out of the farm. All those details have been collected. Samples were analyzed, and the that time what is the status also has been informed to the farmers, along with the suitable management practices by which their productivity can be improved also given to them. So this was done once in periodically 4-month intervals, and this is the health card we have distributed to them. And here also invariably similar to our field experiment results at the campus, here also we could see that the nutrient balance was not sustainable, or the nutrient budgeting was not sustainable, and it was showing negative balance, especially in the case of nitrogen and potassium, and some cases phosphorus. Whereas phosphorus, it was almost high in most, out of the 20 forms, 15 forms it was high. So it was okay, whereas nitrogen and other nutrients, potassium and also micronutrients, were deficit or showing an unsustainable way of practice. So here, if you look at the data, this is what it is showing, a negative balance of particular nutrient, and this case is for potassium. So like that, for all the nutrients we have taken, and this particular model will give you how the nutrients are flowing from one unit to another unit. For example, if a farmer has 3-4 plots growing, one as a coconut intercropped with some crops, another plot may be arecanut, and another plot may be a vegetable. So how the nutrients are flowing between the farms also, we can, between the plots also we can track it, and so that he can easily manage that, because this line, actually the thickness of the line indicates the quantum of nutrient flowing. For example, if it is very thin, the nutrient flowing from one unit to another unit may be less, and if it is very thick, the quantum of nutrients is very highly flowing from that unit to the other unit, or externally may be eroded and all. So he can easily identify what is the problem, and based on that, the management strategy or the management options can be derived. So as I mentioned, so this study also confirmed that based on our earlier hypothesis of the state planning board project, here also the major cause was the soil fertility decline and the nutrient loss through erosion and leaching, decline in soil organic matter, imbalanced fertilizer use. So under the changing climatic scenario, it is going to be worst. That is what most of the studies are predicting, and even some of our studies also confirm that. So what are all the challenges what we have seen now, and how this can be managed with respect to the changing climatic scenario, or in future how this can be addressed towards the next understanding what we have gone for the meeting the second objective. So here we have gone with the agroecological zonation model developed by IASA, Austria. Here actually it is having 5 modules. First module depends on the agroclimatic data analysis, which includes the future climatic scenario, similarly historical scenario and the current status, so that we can compare with the future scenario also how that is going to influence the yield. And the yield or biomass or crop production will be the second module. And third module is based on the first module. If there are any climatic constraints, for example, if the rainfall is deficit or if the rainfall is high, what will happen to the crop productivity? So that will be addressed in the module 3, and module 4 will deals with the agroedaphic constraints, which is especially the soil related constraints, and how the soil related constraints will be as influencing the crop growth. And module 5 will be discussing only about the production potential of the crop, which means how much the crop can produce. That so the potential production of the crop can be understood if everything is okay. For example, there is no climatic constraints, and if there is no edaphic or soil related constraints, then what the crop can able to produce. So based on that potential production, and what is the reduction that is caused by the what do you call the agroclimatic constraints or the soil related constraints, what will be the gap in the yield we can able to understand. So based on this potential yield as well as the yield which is because of the constraints, we will be understanding the yield gap. So how to reduce this yield gap is what they will be the objective, so that we may be able to get the maximum yield even though if there is a climatic constraints or soil related constraints are available. So this is the module structure as I mentioned. So these are all the database we need: climatic data, water related information, soil related characteristics, terrain, especially the topography and slope, land use data, then irrigation practices, whether they are adopting the irrigation as normal irrigation, drip irrigation or micro irrigations methodology, anything is being under use, then what is the existing cropping pattern. So with respect to the scenarios, we have gone for around 20 models, but I am not showing that here. And based on our analysis, we could understand that the ensembled model of these 4 GCMs were found to be matching with the historical data. Historical data, what we are here meaning is the baseline data. What we have used is 1981 to 2010. And that was calculated for the each grid. That was an observed data. So similar was used for the multiple scenarios starting from 2011 to 2040, and kept keeping mid-year as 2020 and 2050 mid-year for 2041, 2070, and 2071 to 2000 keeping 2070 as the mid-year. So these 4 models Hadley Center model, then Max Planck Institute, CSIRO, and the Canadian General Circulation model was found to be when we assemble these 4 things, our observed data and the historical thing, that was what the observed one was matching more closer when compared to other models. And different scenarios we have used since that time. It was the AR5 report. Based on that only RCP 4 scenarios we have considered, 2.6, 4.5, 6 and 8.5. But even then, since EASA was working on the IPCC reports of AR6 also, so we have considered the SSPs also, shared socioeconomic pathways also we have considered, but it has been not shown here. This was the 5 SSP scenarios based on the AR6 report, but these scenarios also have been considered under that RCPs also. And the primary factor we have considered here, apart from the climate scenario, is related to soil. Here we have considered the soil series as one of the basic unit for which, so that the recommendations or the nutrient recommendations or the irrigation recommendations can be derived, especially with respect to soil series, means then there is no need to change for a site specific issue. So if it is, for example, this is a Vellini soil series, means entirely the Vellini soil series will behave more or less same in whatever may be the location it is available. So it will, from this texture series, we will be able to identify the texture of the soil. Here it is clay, and the clay mineral status also we will understand, so which will indicate the soil fertility status. And similarly, CEC also can be derived from the kyolitic or the clay mineral family, and then the temperature regime also we can understand. So these factors, if you know that, which will be helpful for generating the management practices, especially these are all the most influential factors which affect the crop growth. So that generating the recommendations, this has to be the base point, so that we have considered in this study. And based on this, following outputs were derived, first, especially the climate data, future scenario, how it will be, then soil related data, what will happen, then site suitability, crop suitability, and ultimately the crop yield. So I'll come into this as pictorial representation. So if you look at the data, minimum temperature or maximum temperature is increasing, ranging from 0.5 to around 2 degrees centigrade, depending on the different scenarios, from RCP 2.6 to 8.5. Whereas rainfall, invariably all the models showed an excess rainfall. But the change we have observed is the periodicity or the intensity of rainfall may increase, whereas the number of rainy days will decrease. And the data showed that southwest monsoon, there will be an increase in the rainfall, whereas there will be a decrease in the northeast monsoon and summer rainfall, which is very much important with respect to the agriculture, especially to maintain the soil moisture. So if there is a deficit of rainfall in such scenarios, what will happen to the irrigation requirement we have assessed? And we found that around 16 or approximately 15% of increase was noticed. For example, in the case of arecanut and coconut, if there is a shift in the rainfall pattern, especially if there is a deficit in the summer rains. And if you look at the site suitability also, most of the crops, for example, this is one example I'm showing. Coffee, we could understand that it is not suitable when it goes to the climatic scenario of 2050. Then yield of all the crops, for example, black pepper under irrigated rain-fed conditions like that. These outputs have been generated. Just this will give you an idea by 2050 what will be the status and how it can be effectively managed. That is what our objective was. And entirely for the Western Ghats region, including Karnataka region, also we have taken especially for rice and coconut. So we could observe that with respect to rice, there will be a drastic reduction in the yield, which ranged from 6% to 33%. Whereas with respect to coconut, there is a possibility of improvement in the yield, which ranges from 1 to 15%, especially in the southern Kerala region. And the yield as such, I mentioned for almost all the crops, it showed a decline in the yield, which is a very, negative aspect. If you look at that, the range started from 0.3 to 33%, depending on the different scenarios. Whereas if we have a different management practices, for example, if it is irrigated or if you adopt some kinds of micro irrigation techniques, then we could able to understand there is a positive trend in the yield. And that also we have tested for rice, black pepper and arecanut, which showed a positive trend. But mostly in general, we have found that almost all the crops, the yield is showing a declining trend. Almost all the crops, as I mentioned, whereas in the case of coconut, we could see there was a little bit increase in some of the regions. And if you look at the site suitability, which I was discussing in the slide of coffee, we could observe that currently the coffee growing area, which may not be suitable by 2050, that is what the study revealed. So not only the production will decline, that is one issue. Another issue, farmers has to shift to other crops since the current cropping pattern may not be suitable with the increasing temperature or decrease in rainfall or increase in rainfall. Whatever may be the issue, but it may not be suitable. And which is evident from the interaction with the farmers and all, especially in Wayanad. Many of the regions where earlier coffee or pepper is grown, now they are shifting to other crops, especially when they have gone for this kind of change in climate in the last 20 years that they were observing, which may be due to several reasons they are stating, especially with respect to pest and disease incidents, and then crop failure, all those things. So with this thing, then we have conducted the coffee board, and with their support, we have done a detailed study on the coffee, why that is happening for the last 20 years, what is the trend in the yield and how the climatic factors are influencing. We have gone for the detailed study, and based on that, we could make out that coffee is very much sensitive, especially whether it is Arabica and Robusta. Some of the areas, why the area is not suitable is mainly because of this region, this reason. That's what we could make out. Especially for the coffee, then requirement of mean temperature should be minimum. It range should be around 20 to 24. Then only it will be highly suitable. And if it goes above 25 or 26, this is what I am talking about, the mean temperature. Whereas if you look at the maximum temperature and minimum temperature also, it has a specific requirement. So that even a 0.5 degree increase in a specific duration of days, for example, in April or May, if it is going beyond a particular temperature, that will have a definite impact on your coffee productivity. That is which we could able to notice. Similarly, your rainfall pattern, what is the rainfall required in different months, especially for blossoming and all, or flowering, and then which is not conducive in the future scenarios. That is why the mostly around 80% of the area was found to be not suitable for coffee cultivation at the later stages. So which we have cross-verified with the observed data from the RCRS, means Regional Coffee Research Station of Chundel, how over the period from 2000 to 2020, how the yield was obtained in their farms and the nearby farmers' field, and what is this temperature increase or the rainfall pattern variations, how it is influencing. And we could observe that especially with respect to the drought year, means Kerala, it was affected by drought during this 2016 period. That time, a phenomenal decrease in the yield was noticed in a particular, especially in Wayanad region. We have collected the data since RCRS was located at Chundel. So that is evident from this figure also. You can see that most of the areas, especially the Ambala and other coffee growing areas were under severe drought, whereas the wet year, this is just for comparison, I have put in the wet year, the yield was high, and also the maximum productivity was observed. Another reason the farmers were discussing was, based on the survey we could make out, is because of this change in climate or the temperature related parameters, especially rainfall and temperature, the incidence of pest and disease also increases, especially with respect to coffee berry borer. That is showing a different scenario, and now it is matching with the phenology. And when the flower starts, so that period it is getting infested by the CBB, means coffee berry borer, which causes a maximum damage, and it has a direct linkage with the temperature and the rainfall pattern. So that is also maybe one of the reasons for the low productivity. Then in the same study, we have same period, the pre-scenario, we have the analysis based on the soil planning board data, and after flood what happened also has been analyzed, and that results only these maps are showing. So in most of the area we could understand that especially in the midland region and highland region, the soil fertility level has declined because of the high intensity rainfall and all, whereas in lowlands we could be able to observe that the improvement in the soil fertility level, especially organic carbon, has improved a little bit. So how this can be managed, because we know that the productivity is going to decrease, and what do you call that, suitability of the area is also reducing. So how that can be effectively managed, this is what we have attempted with some of the case studies and demonstrations, especially with respect to land and water management, because the other three, especially with respect to crop improvement or development of varieties, which we are not dealing with. So the other, especially with respect to land and water management, what are the possible options combined with the manuring on plant protection measures or agronomic measures, if you take how this production can be sustained or improved. This is what the objective was. So some of the area we have gone for the soil and water. This is just a sample photographs for the moisture conservation. So to conserve the moisture during rainy season, then which will help to improve the soil moisture status if there is a shortage of rainfall or if there is a deficit of soil moisture during the summer period. So this is some of the techniques which we have attempted, and to convince the farmers, especially to know how much quantity of water is getting conserved. Just in some of the plots we have shown them also during rainy seasons how much quantity we have measured and shown. So this much of quantity will be slowly infiltrating or percolating into the soil, and which will help to retain the soil moisture. So in one of the studies, we could observe that the soil moisture, even though if there is no rainfall after November, the soil moisture is maintained when we follow these kind of conservation practices up to March. So which means that the crop can be sustained without much influence of irrigation or any other practices. If there is a deficit of irrigation or if there is a scarcity of water, also crop can be sustained and production can be ensured. Then the next aspect what we have looked into is mainly with respect to the carbon dioxide emissions, how it is influencing, and with respect to temperature increase, what will be the impact and how that can be managed, especially with respect to the management options, how these climate related parameters can be controlled to the possible levels. So in this study, we have considered a small polyhouse with a 1 meter square closed chamber, and that has been used to understand the changes in the elevated temperature. If the temperature increases, what will happen to the crop growth and the productivity, and how that can be managed with respect to the management options, especially like mulching or the application of nutrients combined with organic and inorganic. That was what our strategies where we have utilized, and all the observation, especially crop related, plant related, then soil moisture related, or soil temperature, all those data have been collected in these plots. And interestingly, we have tried with the two crops. One is amaranthus, leafy vegetable, and another one is cowpea. Both the crops showed a different results for different set of management practices, which is then confirming that different management strategies may be needed to have adapt to the climate change or the impact in the increase in temperature, or even with the management of nutrient or water that needs to be done. With respect to CO2 emission, we could see that if it is a combination of nutrients plus inorganic plus organic, the emission was less. Overall, inorganic, it was less because it was a bulk application. It was a minimal quantity, whereas the organic, emission was high because the quantum of nutrient applied was high in the case of organic because of the bulky nature. So that will be definitely resulting in the higher emission. Whereas if it is substituted with the 50 plus 50 inorganic and 50 organic, it is tend to reduce. So these are all some of the emission ratios with the different nutrient management practices. Similarly, mulching was also being tried, and so this study confirmed that for the elevated temperature or increase in temperature, it can be effectively managed if you go with the proper management aspects, especially with respect to nutrient management. We may be able to attain or sustain the yield. So enough mitigation strategies has to be adapted for sustaining the crop production, which was evident, and also the CO2 evolution or CO2 emission can also be controlled in such a way that the soil health can be maintained so that the emission can be reduced. So such studies have been carried out in few of the other crops like coconut and bush pepper, cabbage, like that, with the different management options, whether drip fertigation, organic, inorganic application, soil application, like that. Different strategies have been tested, and in almost all the experiments, we could get the positive results depending on the management aspects what we are applying. For example, if there is a mulching is a practice, if we are following, whether it may be through crop residues or biodegradable sheets, we may be getting good results with respect to yield and also the reduction in the CO2 evolution. That's what CO2 emission, that is what we could able to get. And among the crops, we have found that the emission was higher in the case of black pepper, which may be due to the microbial activity because of this root characteristics and mineralization of nutrients, which might have had the reason for the higher emission. So all these possibilities we need to consider when we go for the adaptation practices, especially with respect to climate change scenarios. What are all the positive effects and what are all the negative effects? All these things have to be considered before suggesting any management options to the farming community. So in this case, again, another farmer participatory approach of drip fertigation, also how it is going to influence with respect to the water and nutrient management practices, has also been attempted with two kinds of models and softwares, especially the Hydrus and CropWord. For different crops we have attempted, and this was funded by the DST. Different regions we have taken almost 9 districts of Kerala with some 22 plots. It has been laid out with different techniques of managing the water and nutrient management. These are all the list of plots, some 22 plots we have taken. So here, as I mentioned in the beginning, the irrigation practices needs to be scheduled according to the requirement of the crop. So that has been assessed based on our earlier studies, as well as some field experiments with respect to different vegetables, and also even including perennials like coconut and all. With that data, we have validated these models. So for this case, for example, in this case, if you look at the figure, so this is the dripping point, and for banana, so this is the banana plant. If you assume like that with the 2 drippers on both sides, and if you are irrigating for 2 hours with 8 liters of dripper or 4 liters of dripper, what will be the wetting pattern? And the next when they have to irrigate has been assessed using this model. And initially it was validated for the greenhouse experiment as well as the field experiment at the CWRDM and at one more farmer field in Thrissur. And based on that data, we have gone for the other locations and given the fertigation schedule as well as the nutrient schedule, as well as the water irrigation scheduling to the farmers. So farmers themselves were operating these drip fertigation plots for managing both water and nutrient. This is one case study of banana at Thrissur, and another one is a vegetable plot at Palakkad. And the results were also compared with respect to the yield as well as the crop related parameters, especially growth and physiological parameters, biochemical analysis, and then soil moisture, wetting pattern, and all. I'm not showing all the details, but with respect to the moisture, if you look at that drip irrigation, we could able to get a uniform soil moisture distribution across the soil profile, both horizontally and vertically. If you look at that from the dripping point to 45 centimeters horizontally and vertically, the moisture distribution was uniform. Whereas in the case of channel irrigation or flood irrigation, it was not that uniform, and there was a huge variation, especially with respect to the interval. So flood irrigation, normally if they are irrigating, farmers are irrigating within one week time or 4 days interval or 5 days interval. So initially the soil moisture will be very high with lesser aeration. So that will also affect the plant growth. And similarly, at the later stage, means that is in the 4th day or 5th day, the soil moisture deficit will be there, and that also will affect the crop. So initially also it will affect the crop, and during irrigation and after irrigation, after 3-4 days also it will be affecting the crop because of lack of moisture. So in all these demo plots, some small area has been kept under their own conventional practice of channel irrigation or flood irrigation, or without irrigation also. For example, coconut and all, it has been kept as a rain fed also. Then we have compared what is the difference between both drip fertigation plot as well as the irrigated flood irrigation or channel irrigation plot. And some of the results only here I was depicting, especially the soil moisture. So these are all some of the photographs with the farmer's field as well as the drip at polyhouses, greenhouse, then open fields. This is a banana vegetable plot I was discussing about in Palakkad district of this thing, tomato. This is the banana in Thrissur. So almost all these locations, we have arranged some workshops and seminars for the farmers to create the awareness, and the soil moisture as well as the wetting pattern, all these things were monitored. And especially what the farmers were saying is like the produce, whatever they are getting is also uniform size, and uniform quality wise also it was better. And some of the plots we have did the quality analysis of the crop produce also, because all the essential nutrients which is required for the plots plants have been given. So that is what our objective was. And the results actually, if you look at this, all the 22 plots, the result varied from around 30% of yield improvement to the maximum was 236%. I mean, almost 2 times higher yield was observed in the case of vegetables and all. Whereas in the case of perennials, especially coconut, arecanut and all, the yield improvement was to the tune of 30 to 40%. Because whatever we apply, the impact may not be immediately visible. It may take around 2 to 3 years. So the continuous observation has to be done, and this we have done for almost 4 years during the project period. So still the possibility of improvement may be there, but with respect to vegetables and all, we could be able to get a very high, almost double the yield what we could be able to observe. And as I mentioned, the product was of more uniform quality, so they will get a good premium price, and this is being practiced in many of the areas nowadays. And especially what we could make out is that because of this rainfall pattern only, many of the other areas, especially southern districts, this is not getting popularized, because the southwest monsoon and northeast monsoon, they are getting in more or less uniform pattern, even though there is a shift in that that is affecting the crop productivity, but still it is not visible. Whereas a region like Palakkad or Wayanad, they are going for such technologies, which is definitely getting more yield with respect to productivity with less water. Especially most of our results showed that saving of around 30 to 50%, but on an average we can say around 40% of savings in water, and similarly nutrient also we can reduce around 25% approximately. And it varied with depending on the practice what the farmers are adopting. And another important aspect is that we can able to save the electricity or energy. We can save around 30%, since the interval or irrigation duration is getting reduced, and we are applying only the required quantity of water. So that itself will help us to reduce this electricity. And the yield improvement was mainly due to what we could make out from all the demonstration plots was the extended crop harvest was there, even beyond the crop duration. For example, in the case of vegetables, if the yield starts from 45th day or 50th day in the under drip fertigation, since both water and nutrients are supplied at the regular interval and without any impact of the climate events, especially temperature or those kind of things, they will be starting yielding in 40th day itself. So some 10-15 days before it will start. Similar is the case with the later stage. At the maturity stage also, the extended the crop, maybe another 10-15 days we will get. So ultimately 3 to 4 additional harvest also we will get, and that is actually helping the farmers to improve the yield. And these are all with respect to the generally with respect to field crops what we have discussed without rice, because rice actually, if you look at the water consumption of rice, will be very huge, and Kerala, even though the area has reduced, but still overall, if you look at that, especially in this paper we were discussing about what are all the saving techniques which is available under different climate change scenario, especially if you have a lesser rainfall or if you have a more rainfall, how we can manage the water management, especially with respect to rice. For example, under flooded conditions, if a particular variety has been chosen, it can able to survive maybe more days, like 15 to 20 days, even under flooding, it may be able to survive. Similarly, under water scarcity conditions, what we can do, especially the aerobic cultivation or alternate wetting and drying that can be carried out, so that we can save minimum 30 to 40% of this water usage under rice, which we have also attempted in the campus with the different treatments, especially flooded aerobic, then different nutrient management practices. This was done with the support of our colleagues, Dr. Ashish and Naveen. So all the what do you call, morphological parameters, soil moisture.
Dr. Surendran,
Sir,
sorry to disturb you. How many slides you have actually?
maybe another 5-10 slides, sir.
Okay, okay. So that we also can discussion. We can give some time so people can ask question.
Okay.
Yeah, please continue. Please continue. Yeah. Please continue, sir. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay. So here all these characteristics are taken care of, and especially that is mainly used for calibrating the model DSAT, and for two varieties, Uma and Jodi, which is a common variety in Kerala, and how this water and nutrient management has been influencing the yield. So if there is a change in the, for example, temperature increase is there, how it will be affecting the yield. Similarly, if the rainfall deficit is there, what will be happening. So the same has been tested at two farmers' location also, and here we could able to get a very good prediction with respect to two varieties, Ponni and year 20 in that experiment, and another two varieties like Uma and Jodi was also we could able to get a good results. So these data sets can be utilized for predicting the yield. For example, how the climate change, especially if the temperature is increasing, or if there is a rainfall, excess rainfall is there, how it will be influencing the yield. We can predict using these models, and that can be related spatially and temporally also. So that is one advantage of these kind of crop simulation models. So this we have done for two regions of Tamil Nadu actually. Similarly, we have done for Alapi district also. When if it is under flooded condition, what will happen to the rice yield, especially for Uma variety? We have done a study, and we could make out that the yield reduction was around, if it is a not very extreme rainfall, if the paddy field is flooded for 6 days to 8 days, how it will be affecting the yield. So that was what our objective was, especially in that particular study. We could understand that the yield reduction was around 6 to 20%. But if it is beyond 10 days flooded conditions, then there will be a drastic reduction in the yield, or even a crop failure can be noticed. That was a model related experiment and not as a field experiment. But some of the data we have collected from Alapi region for that particular study. This is another one management practices for this thing, as we were discussing about the mulching, especially under water scarce conditions, how we can go for reducing the water use efficient, means reducing the water use and increasing the water use efficiency or water productivity. This has been done. Sir, then shall I close this, sir? I think few more are there.
Yeah, actually, we can give some time for asking question. I think.
Yeah. Maybe then one more slide, just I'll show.
Yes, yes,
After
yes,
that, we can.
yes.
So based on whatever studies we have carried out, we have developed a few decision support systems for the user community so that they can make use of this, and some of this have been given as a pilot scale to some of the agriculture officials and department, especially agriculture department. This is about the integrated crop nutrient management software, where you can manage both the water and nutrient management, deriving the fertilizer recommendations as well as the irrigation requirement. So that was one output, and it will be giving you the recommendations, especially the fertilizer recommendations, as well as the organic manure and all. Similarly, with respect to irrigation, you can have, for example, if you select a location or a district, we will be able to generate the quantum of water required for each month, how much water they have to apply, and similarly at what intervals, or the what should be the frequency, that also we can derive. So these are all some of the outputs which we can give it to the stakeholders, what we are currently having. And in general, these are all the adaptation options to mitigate the climate change. So some of these things, especially with respect to water saving technologies, precision farming, and related to mulching, all those things we have also validated based on the Kerala conditions. And with respect to varieties, also we have gone for especially drought related or salinity tolerant and flood tolerant. We have done few studies. But still, Kerala Agriculture University, ICR institutes are also doing. And this general recommendations is that these are all the practices by which we may be able to mitigate or adapt to the changing climate, so that the productivity can be sustained. So with this, I'll be stopping here. Maybe I'll be happy to have some interaction. And all these programs were funded by different funding agencies, starting from DST, Kerala State Council, Department of Environment, Climate Change, TFAC, Ministry of Water Resources, and all. And I'm happy that currently we are having a project associated with ICCS also, in which Director Sir is also actively involved, especially the Bharatapuzha River Basins. River basin that is also on integrating hydrology and agriculture, how we can manage under the changing scenario of climate. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Surendran. Actually, you have given a very, very comprehensive presentation, starting with, you have got how much irrigated area, crop areas within the country, and then Kerala, what is the crop production, it's changes compared to 51. And then even you have touched upon experimental, a lot of experiments, theoretical studies. So it was a really nice, nice thing. So before I ask some question, I will open for questions from others, and then I will come back to my question. So anybody have any questions actually?
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Sinan, good afternoon.
Sir, it was really nice presentation. And during the presentation, I've seen that you have mentioned the increasing intensity of rainfall is one of the major reasons for deteriorating soil health. So my question is it observed along the steep slopes, or is it observed in the plains as well?
No, both we have observed, and the results what I have shown is one is at the slope of around 30% at the experimental field on rain means automatic rain gauge. So the intensity was calculated for around the period of 3 years, especially during southwest monsoon. Another one is at the normal plain region. So both we have seen, and most of the cases, especially during southwest monsoon, we could see the increase in the intensity. And the CWRM data also 1980 to 2017, I think, before flood. That data also shows that especially the torrential events of 60 mm per hour or more, the numbers are increasing, especially during the monsoon season.
Okay, sir, is it directly because of the intensity, or is it because like we have more impervious areas recently and more water surface runoff is coming to the fields, or is it directly because of the increasing intensity?
No, this field experiment study is like a very small area, so we cannot generalize as such. But the intensity, as you rightly pointed out, the other areas may be because of the impervious nature and the fine soil removal that might have happened earlier. That may be also one of the reasons. But what we were trying to say is this particular area, we could notice that the intensity is increasing. Means the rainfall intensity I am talking. That will inducing means that is inducing the erosion. And when we have some kind of conservation management practices or something, it is actually getting reduced. That is also evident from the quantification of the soil erosion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Any other?
Can I have a minute?
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Please, sir, please.
Yes.
When I was listening very carefully, I was listening to all the points. It's an excellent data. Very good compilation of data. A lot of information is available. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you for hearing, sir, for the whole session.
No, I have a special interest on this particular title because your title happened to be very attractive.
Yeah.
Dr. Pai is arranging a stockholders workshop, during the first week of August.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are discussing, sir.
And, I was trying to collect some informations where, the stockholders like farmers, people like the health people, dam people, all other people, when they are going to come up with their grievances with respect to climate change, what kind of remedial action or answers we can give. That was my main theme of listening the things.
Okay, sir.
I mean, other agricultural aspects, whatever you do, is all okay, drip irrigation and everything. See, now the problem, the climate change affecting Kerala, the problem we are experiencing for the last 3-4 years. Started with 2018. Of course, 2019, somehow we have been skipped, and 20 again added. 21 we again slightly escaped, now 22 coming and etc. Here the problem is waterlogging. Flood and waterlogging is the main issue. And farmers are suffering very much, especially not like coconut farmers and coffee farmers, rubber farmers and etc. But the people who are with the paddy field, cereals and such kind of vegetable gardens, such people take a lot of suffering. Kuttanad area, what I understood is the major problem is because of the fluctuation of the timing. See, here we do the farming with respect to, see, there are two things. Kalathil anusarichu krishi cheyyuka, kalavasthakku anusarichu krishi cheyyuka. Like we know, now it just become a big problem.
Yeah.
See, exactly the harvest period, continuously 2-3 weeks, if it is going to rain, what the way will do.
Yes, yes.
And with any of our models, with the available statistical data as on today, we are not to tell, next year what will be the change. Exactly. Very, very difficult because the nature plays, a kind of tricky way it plays depending on many parameters.
Definitely.
We may have about less than half a dozen parameters like moisture content, temperature, wind pattern, and all other kind of things, aerosol concentration, etc. Maybe the things we may look into. There may be certain other parameters which affect the changes which we are yet to understand and study. In this particular scenario, see, suppose this year, the rain has come early, so that, it was only hardly 1 more month for harvesting. Even recently, I think 2 days back, there was a thing in the plant and Vadakrishikare. What a tragedy it was, about, thousands and thousands of plantain, because of the logging, water logging, accumulation, etc. Anyway, it should have been another 3 weeks or 1 month, they would have harvested it. They all made by huge investment for harvesting the plantain things, for the Onam season.
Yes.
Such kind of things, the people come up with us and asking what to do, what the scientists can help, in what way. Other things are all, I understand whatever you told is correct. See, as far as we are concerned, now drought is almost a rare scenario. We have water, enough water, or I say even surplus water. And we don't have, even if there is a small 1 or 2 weeks, if there is a high summer. This year there was no summer at all. I have noted in my diary from the 15th of March, continuously it is raining every week. Not even 10 days time without rain, we don't have from March onwards. Continuously it is, even now it is continuing. Such a scenario, in what way we can, convert or modify our studies to see, is there any other parameters which we have not understood, which is instrumental for this. See, if you want to have a model and a prediction, etc., we should understand the root cause. See, now we have only the causes, the general causes. When the sea surface temperature increases, what happens there, etc., we know, and with respect to that, and then the environment, what we have, and of course, as you rightly pointed out, we have a very peculiar environment in Kerala. The shape, and the Western Ghats,
Yes, sir.
and the elevation from the mean sea level to the Western Ghat, how steep is the topography goes on that, etc. Is a very, that is why we are suffering more.
Yeah.
And every year, see, one thing what you have told is, site suitability. See,
Yes, sir.
already our agricultural lands are all very, very minimum. Now, if we started looking at the site suitability, now from next year onwards, Kutanadi, we can't have paddy at all. People will say this site is not suitable. We can't escape with that kind of thing. We cannot. We should find out a solution.
Yes.
We should find out a solution, and the poor farmers, we should be able to console, telling that if not today, at least maybe within 1 or 2 years, when the trend pattern of these changes, if it goes, is it possible we can make a refined, more accurate models which will give an indication, what will be the trend.
Yes.
And second point is, it is not the rain alone. See, the total quantum of rain, Pai may correct me, total quantum of rain for the last 3-4 years has not increased much.
Yeah.
It is am I correct, Pai?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It has not increased. It has
It is not increased. It is not increased. It's only the sporadic way and the rate of pouring.
Yes,
The
sir.
intensity of explosion and intensity of precipitation has increased to such a level that there was not sufficient time for the flowing of the water to the spreading, flowing and absorbing in the earth. That was another. I think that particular area, if we can have an understanding, more understanding, at least we can mitigate the disaster.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And that is what we are concentrating now. After the 2018, 2020 issue, etc., we are concentrating more on how the mitigation can be done. The intensity rate to predicting it. That is, the PICE group is doing a lot of things now, to understand by putting instruments, gauges and everything, to understand it. So this kind of question will come from the common public.
Yes, sir.
They are not scientists like us. They will ask questions, what should we do? And we are the people feeding you
Definitely.
with a different type of crops by struggling on the field, on the earth. How long we can struggle like this, and what is the solution they may ask? And we people should think a bit more on that. But drought, when it comes, there are a number of things. Deficiency in nutrients we can do wonderfully well. That's no problem. And we can drip irrigation type of things, we can store the water in reservoirs and we can pump it and we can irrigate it. That's all within our hand. We are doing it. Quite someday we are doing. But the overpouring of the water, accumulation, logging, and which comes in a very random, sporadic manner, how we can escape. I think that should be the real problem which concerns to us. And I am more worried on the August workshop, what are things these people are putting to question. Over. Thank you. Thank you for a very good presentation.
Yeah, thank you for suggestions, sir. Just I was telling, like, with respect to the points what you have mentioned, sir, some of this thing I have not shown here. For example, Alapura and Wayanad, we have done a study, especially with respect to water logging, excess water logging, or because of winds and excess rainfall, especially the impact on the paddy as well as plantains, banana, because as you rightly pointed, it's not a systematic study. We have based on the issues what the farmers were facing, we have visited a few plots, and then we could make out that especially their immediate solution is one is insurance has to be means that sensitization has to come, sir. Second thing what we have observed is the selection of varieties or the particular cropping pattern. As you rightly pointed out, the rainfall pattern, in the sense untimely rainfalls, which is causing the problem. Especially last time also the same thing happened during harvest, it rained. So if we go with some short duration varieties, as pointed out, definitely that will help the farmers to evade these kind of untimely rains or wind, especially strong winds and the breaking of these plantains and all. But as pointed out, this prediction is another issue, sir. So that we cannot maybe that much sure. But some of these things, as a testing phase or pilot scale, they can go in location wise, and definitely that will help the farmers to mitigate or manage or adapt to that to some level, especially with respect to paddy. There are some varieties which can be harvested by around 80 days to 90 days. So if they can plant even late rainfall also during sowing, it will have an impact. So accordingly, if we can manage little bit the season or calendar, that will definitely help to sustain or at least optimize the yield, sir. But it needs to be tested or validated in few more these things. But as you rightly pointed out, that climatic predictions, we are not that much sure. That is what the issue is. So excess water logging or flooding, we can go with this kind of options, so that the drastic reduction can be reduced and minimal loss will be there.
Okay, nice, Dr. Surendran. Actually, anybody else have got any question? So it was a very nice, actually points raised by Datan Saab.
Yes,
yeah, so it's actually we have to be very
careful. Yeah, we have to explore that option, sir.
Yeah, see, while you had explained, the crop production impact of fertilizer, so soil fertility, and then you said, drip fertigation. So this is the first word I am hearing actually. That anyway, it may be because I am not very good in agriculture thing actually, and soil. These are all you had done mention all that point. Perhaps you had missed, I think, pest and diseases impact on that also in that model. And then you also had suggested many adaptation technique also, controlling. So like we will have to come up with also, farmers may have developed some indigenous adaptation process within time. I think that we don't have that type of, success stories which they have adapted something, come up. Because rather than scientists suggesting many times what happened, we suggest something which may not be practically, you can do in the lab or other thing. So we have to come up with also indigenous. So that is the, we have got a lot of enlightened farmers throughout the Kerala. So I have seen many, they do so many things combinedly with, vegetable and many other things together. perhaps even that is very important in the sense to keep the fertility of soil. If it get exposed to sunlight after one crop to the other, actually, the soil, I understand the soil fertility get decreased. So you have to organic carbon in that soil to improve. You have to continuously, some other activity has to be keep on doing. So which generally some indigenous technique being used by farmers. I think that need to be brought out. And overall, you have done a very excellent thing. Points have brought out. I will appreciate if you can bring out a small report of best practices, etc. If you can do, and we can publish it as a ICCS report here. So that will become a guidance, starting point, and then people can come up with that. And definitely, as Datan Saab said, during that time, we also need to come up with some recommendation how we have to work on that. Yeah. Another one thing which I want to know is that, many times that agricultural advisories has to be given. Now, perhaps it is given under district wise, and then later it is planned to go, block wise also. Do we have got this package of practices information for all the blocks or all the district? Do you have an idea?
Yes, sir. It is there, sir. It is actually by the Kerala Agriculture University, and they are issuing the agro advisories, as you rightly pointed out, under the DAM scheme, and block level advisories also. The thing is that package of practices in general, as of now, it is being dealt in general. But now they are focusing on agroecological zone based. For each zones, they have specific recommendations, and weekly forecast or fortnightly, that is what they are issuing, especially with respect to, like Datan sir was pointing out, untimely rainfall, how to manage. Similarly, pest and disease, if there may be a possibility of high infestation. So they will come out with some general in the sense, particular to particular pest and disease, they will give you a recommendation, sir. And they are issuing through what's means mobile services, as well as different methodologies are there.
Yeah.
And the first one was about the indigenous technologies. Even CWIDM has compiled, especially not related to the entire agriculture practices, but with respect to water management, we have compiled, which was funded by MOWR. So under, as Sir was also asking, both water scarce regions as well as excess water logging conditions, what are the practices indigenously or traditionally farmers are following. So that document is available, sir, already.
Good. And in fact, as we are seeing that the weather or climate is getting changed, and that will continue to change. So whether we have got any scope to change our entire agriculture pattern, because this is the question later will come up, whether the presently what agriculture practice that we are following, is it okay, or whether slight, as Sir has clearly said, when you are harvesting time, suddenly you get rain, etc. So how that can be, whether slight shifting and here and there, will it really help us? So
yeah, that is actually that is what now most of the agriculture scientists or even farmers are also looking that way. So depending on the scenario, either they are going with a different mixture of crops so that the loss can be minimized. That is one thing. And suitability also, as Datan sir was rightly pointed out, some of the things we may not be able to change immediately. For example, if it's a perennial crop like coconut or coconut, even if we say that it is not suitable, we may not be able to change it quickly, but we can go with slight modifications. That is what currently even KU or other agriculture universities are doing according to the events, climate related extreme events, or even natural shifts and all they are considering. And as much as possible, how it can be managed with a different set of crops or different varieties, which is climate ready varieties or climate smart varieties. Like that, that approach is coming up, sir, but it's not in the full swing. It's in the initial phase.
See, I have been seeing, I have interacted with many agrometeorologists and agriculture. In fact, when I come to Kerala interacting, there is a lot of talent actually, and a lot of people are really knowledgeable about, climate and agriculture. In spite of all that, we are not so good in agriculture. I don't know.
Yeah.
So even small state like Punjab or Haryana providing. So I don't know. So we have got a lot of capacity, very highly knowledgeable people. Literacy rate is high. Everything is there, and a good weather, as we said. Maybe there are soil fertility and other aspect. So somehow we are missing. I don't know whether there is some kind of things which we can do and bring out. We can become a good agriculture state because we have got a natural resource like water and other is readily available. Maybe as you have shown, compared to countries like Indonesia or certain, we may have to give instance to more certain type of only crops rather than going for so many crops. Certain which can actually help the farmer. Those type of things has to come up.
Yeah.
Anyway, very nice. So I will ask any other any questions more. Anybody else? Final. So because already we have 4:30 is over. If anybody has quick question, we can do that. Or otherwise, I will go to Shama for Thanksgiving. Okay, Shama. So you can. Thank you, Surendran. A very excellent talk. Huh?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I also actually was not knowing much about I learned a lot from this lecture.
Okay.
Thank you, Shama.
I'm delighted to submit a vote of gratitude on behalf of ICCS to today's keynote speaker, Dr. Surendran, scientist CWRDM, who took time out of his busy schedule and chose to be with us to offer this outstanding and comprehensive speech on impact of climate change on agriculture with special reference to the scenario in Kerala. My deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the participants, especially Dr. M.C. Dattan sir, for actively participating in the discussion and made it a successful event. I would also like to thank Dr. D.S. Pai, Director of ICCS, for his initiative in organizing this lecture series and also for his constant support and guidance. I would also like to thank all my colleagues at ICCS for the support. Once again, I thank you all for sparing time and being with us. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Surendra sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sir.
Good.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. We will speak on workshop later.
We will discuss.
We will relax that. Tomorrow something we will conduct a meeting.
Okay. That day I couldn't attend.
Yeah, no problem. And we need now, very few days are there.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can also see that today I had sent some email regarding RC meeting. If you get a time, just go through that.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.